ChessFest Academy, Lesson 4 on the bishop. Let's do a very quick review first of the board, the kings and the rooks, before we go on to the bishops. If you find yourself confused at any point during this review, go back and watch those lessons again. Let's start with the board. Show me the B file. Got it? The B file? Good. Now show me the fifth rank. The fifth rank. There you go. Got it. Show me some squares. How about D7? Where's D7? Great. And could you show me G2? G2. Excellent. Let's take out those kings. Do you remember where our kings go? Remember, our white king will go on the first rank on the opposite color, so on the E file. And our black king will go on the 8th rank, opposite the white king on E8. Are you ready? We're going to do some quick king moving here just to get a little practice with them. White, we're going to start with king F2. White, king F2. And now black, would you do king D7? King D7. And white, let's take your king over to E3. White, play king E3. Black, king D6. You can see where I'm headed, can't you? And white, why don't you take your king to D4? And you probably already know what I'm going to ask you. What are the 3 squares that the black king cannot move to now? It's black's move. Normally has 8 squares around him where he can move out in the middle of the board, but 3 of those are off limits. They would be illegal moves. What are the names of those squares? C5, D5, and E5. Black cannot move to those 3 squares, and if he did, let's say he did king C5, would white go ahead and capture the king? No, never happens. Not in chess. You say, that's an illegal move. You need to move it back and do something else. Great. That's the review on the kings. By the way, if you find anything with that or the rook's confusing, go back and do those lessons again. Don't move ahead until you're pretty solid on everything we've done so far. Let's set our rooks up. You remember they go in the corners. Just be certain that white is on the 1st rank and black is on the 8th rank. Now we know that we have capture sitting on the board here, and notice all along also I've been putting out for you the moves, and you can see what letter, when we write a move, what letter represents a capture. Does anybody pick up on that? I didn't tell you. I showed you, but I didn't tell you. The letter X. Very good. So white is going to move first. White, take your A rook. Look at your rook on A1 and put your hand on him. And slide him right up the A file. Remember, we're doing it the super cool, fabulous way with one hand. And we're going to take the black rook on A8, and we would write that as RXA8. Notice also that we use capital letters for the names of the pieces and lowercase letters for the capture, the X for the capture, as well as for the names of the squares. And you can remember that easily because the letters on your board, if you have letters on your board, are lowercase. If you don't have letters on your board, you might want to write them in. All right, black rook move. You only have 1 rook, so we don't have to tell you which one. Go ahead and slide along the 8th rank there and take white's rook from A8. And again, see, we're doing it with one hand. Super cool, fabulous way. And that's RXA8. Notice that those 2 moves are written the same way. Isn't that funny? And we don't have to say what we captured there. It's whatever's there. RXA8. The rook captures on A8. Now we're down to 1 rook each, and please remember our touch rule. Those captured pieces go on the side of the board where they shall not be touched again until the end of the game. You don't sit there and play with those captured pieces. It's annoying and people will not like you. Now your job from here would be to continue moving so that you don't lose your 2nd rook. But we'll leave off there so we can move on to the bishop. That's right, we're moving on to a new piece. If you want to play that rook exercise a little bit further, go ahead and pause the video here and do that on your own. Our bishops, they look like this. Bishop has an interesting history. Now, there's no way you would find a bishop on a field of battle. So why is the bishop on a field of battle? Well, what is a bishop? Well, those of us who are Catholic know what a bishop is very well. Here in our city of Savannah, we have Cathedral St. John the Baptist, and our bishop's name is Gregory Hartmeyer, and he wears a big pointy hat on special occasions. And that's kind of what the bishop looks like. He looks like the bishop's mitre is the name of his hat. But originally, you'll never guess this, the bishop was an elephant. That's right, an elephant. And the reason he looks so funky like that is because in Islam, and chess came from through Islamic countries, you're not supposed to make something that looks like a person or something in real life. It would be like making an idol. And so they couldn't really make the elephant look like an elephant. And so what they do is they just cut the slit in the piece there to give you kind of the idea of the elephant's tusk. The tusk of the elephant coming up there. And that was enough to make it not an elephant, but to remember, okay, this is the elephant. And elephants were used in battle. If you've ever seen the movies The Lord of the Rings, you know that they have those giant oliphants that are gigantic elephants out in battle. And the elephant simply became a bishop when chess moved to the West, and there were no elephants used in battle, but there was a bishop in the king's court. So when the general became a king, the elephant became a bishop. So we have a very strange war field here in Western chess. Now, just like with the rooks, each side has two bishops, and they come in a special pair. You just have two rooks, but the bishops are special in that they are a pair. Let's place your bishops. So let's start with white. We're looking at the first rank. Your bishops go on the C and F file. C and F. So one bishop on C1, one bishop on F1. And we could do the same for black on C8 and F8. Now before we even get into how the bishops move, let's take a look at them. You notice that one of your bishops is on a light square, and one of your bishops is on a dark square. Take a look at them. One's on a light square, one's on a dark square. That will be very important, because I'll tell you something now. The light square bishop will always be on a light square. Always. And the dark square bishop will always be on a dark square. They never cross over to the other side. Now, take a look at your chessboard here. How many squares are on the board? How many squares do we have? We know we have 8 ranks, and going across, it's a square, the board itself, so 8 files, 8 times 8, 64. Now, if you're, let's take white's dark square bishop, he can only go on the dark squares. So he can't go on all 64 squares, because half of them are light, and he will never go on a light square. So looking at this dark square bishop, how many squares can he go on? That's right, half of 64, 32. Very good. So each bishop can only go on 32 squares. Go back for a minute and think about your rooks. Now they had good moves and bad moves, but throughout the course of a game, a rook could conceivably go to any square on the board. These can go on to 64 squares, all 64 squares. So your bishops are kind of half as powerful. They can only go on half the squares. So it's best to have both of your bishops, to have them as a pair. That's why I started by saying your bishops are a pair. They work together. This one goes on all the dark squares. This one goes on all the light squares. 32 squares each. They can't go wherever they want. So with that, you probably figured out, I bet you did. You're smart, aren't you? You figured out how the bishop moves. Well, picture an elephant in battle. He has a big carriage on top of him and a harness with reins to direct him through a battle, and he's going to be loping along at an angle. So bishops move diagonally. So take your white, go ahead and take your dark square bishop. So white, put your hand on your dark square bishop. That's the one on C1. And let's move him over to A3. So white, bishop, A3. And you see how he moves diagonally across the squares. Well, I purposely gave you a bad move, white. Sorry about that. Because black, what do you notice? If you're playing black, look at your bishops. Don't touch anything, remember our touch rule. But take a look. What do you notice? You probably see that your dark square bishop, the one who's on F8, can slide along that diagonal and pick off white's dark square bishop. Easy capture. All right, let's set him back up and make some smart moves this time. You see how bishops move, though? It's very easy to remember diagonally. Now, I'm going to make this a little challenging for you. I'm going to tell you where to move your bishop, but I am not going to tell you which bishop to move, because only one bishop can get to that square. So if I tell you a square, look at it. If it's a light square, which bishop would you move? Of course, your light square bishop. And if it's a dark square, which bishop would you move? Again, your dark square bishop. It's pretty easy that way. So the object of the game here, notice we have no captures on the board because bishops move diagonally. Even though they're straight across from each other, they can't do anything to each other right now. There are no captures on this board. So what we want to do is keep both your bishops. Try not to lose a bishop. So let's have white go first. I'll tell you where to go. Ready, white? Bishop C4. White, move your bishop to C4. So before you even touch anything, hands off. Find C4. Take a look at that square. What color is it? That's right, it's a light square. So we'll be moving your light square bishop. And that makes sense. You can see that diagonal right there as he slides up to C4. Now it's black's move. Ready, black? Go ahead and move to bishop C5. Black, bishop C5. Find C5 before you even touch a piece. It's a dark square. So you'll be moving your dark square bishop. And you can see right how he slides along that diagonal. Now I did this on purpose. Notice that we have all four bishops on the same file, on the C file. Are there any captures on this board? Say no. Are there any captures on this board? No, because bishops move diagonally. It doesn't matter that these guys are right next to each other. In fact, try right now. This is an important skill to have. Look at your bishop that's out in the center of the board here. If you're playing white, look at your bishop on C4. If you're playing black, look at your bishop on C5. And picture the squares, like draw a line with your eyes, the squares that that bishop can move to. Do you see the X? Now let's actually count. How many squares can each of those bishops move to in this open field? Well, let's start with black. You have 2 on this side, 4 on this side, 2 on this side, 3 on this side. So that's 6 and 5 together make 11. Good. How about white? 2 and 4, 2 and 3. Again, 5 and 6 make 11. So 11 squares each. A little bit less than we had with the rook, right? A rook on an open field can move to 14 squares. So you see how the bishops are a little less valuable than a rook in an open field. And that's why, you see, the chess pieces have values. The rook is worth 5 points. Now there's no scoring like in basketball or baseball or football, but so you can keep track of how you're doing with your material. Your rook, think of as worth 5 points. And your bishop then would be worth 3 points. So even your bishop pair, when you have both of your bishops, 3 and 3 make 6. So having both bishops is just a wee bit better than having one rook. And how much would 2 rooks be worth then? If you have both your rooks, 5 and 5 make 10. So 10 points versus 6 points. Would you rather give up your bishops or your rooks? Of course, you'd rather give up the bishops. Your rooks are much more valuable because they can do more. They can go to more squares. Now, I want you to take it from here. we left off, it's white's move. Keep moving your bishops around and try to avoid a capture. There is no rush. This is not, let's see how fast we can move. The name of this game is don't lose your bishops. If you're moving quickly, you'll probably make mistakes and lose your bishops. So the way to avoid losing your bishops is to look at what your opponent does. Actually stop before you move and look at what your opponent just did. And then decide what you are going to do. There is no rush. Chess is not about fast. Chess is about slow down and think. So let's move our bishops around and see if we can avoid the bishop capture.